Alright, well, as you can see, and probably assume, I got the muck replanted last night. And I fully intended to take some video replanting the muck, but I did not expect to be able to do it in about 4.5 hours after work on a Friday night. I thought I'd go down there, get 10 acres done, and then take video doing a 12, and I ended up getting it all done. So I didn't get any video of it, but the planting videos are getting kind of redundant. So the only thing different was I used the 66 because it was the closest thing to the barn door. So, and I got over all of it except for there's a little spot that, if you remember when I was planting it the first time around, was wet. I couldn't get through that. It's about 16 rows wide. Or is it 20 rows wide? Pretty sure it's 16 rows wide and maybe 50 foot long. That I just didn't bother. I just planted up to it, turned around, and because if it's staying that wet this long, it's probably not going to grow anything anyhow. And even if it did grow something, that means I still got to try to combine through it in the fall. And I just hate, if it was out in the middle of the field, I'd have probably went down there with a disc and busted it open so I could have planted through it. But every wet spot in that field is on the damn end rows. So when you're combining it, if it's wet, you got to try to turn around in them damn wet spots, and that sucks. I hate doing it. So sometimes it's just easier to pick your battles, plan around it, because it's going to make your life easier the whole damn year. Plus it's done and I'm ready to be done. So anyhow, getting ready to prep everything for, or prep the planter and the drill for storage. So I figured I'd show what we got going on here. I got it power washed already. That muck was a little sticky, so it was a little bit of a mess, but not nearly as bad as the mess I've had on it for the last 2 seasons. But anyhow, start off with the boxes. I got them power washed out, and then I blew them out with air. And before I put, well, first off, I don't store them with the plates in because I don't want anything rusting up. The plates stay down here in the barn, and the planter gets put back together without plates in it. And before I put the base plates back on, everything in here gets coated with WD-40. You don't want anything heavy like oil or anything, just enough to keep it. And WD-40 is actually a water repellent, so it works pretty good for spots like this. And then the base plates get hit. And then those go back together. Then before lids go back on, the inside of the box I shoot with WD. And then you just slap the lids back on and the boxes are done. Alright, next is the fertilizer boxes, and before the augers go back in, I take waste oil and brush down the boots. Try to get as much in as I can, because if you use something heavy like oil, even if there's a little bit of fertilizer residue left in there, which there always is because the way these things are shaped, you can only get in there with a power washer so good. Even if there's a little fertilizer residue on there, the oil will stop any chemical reaction from taking place that'll cause it to start rusting. And usually anywhere that fertilizer could have come in contact with on this thing, it just gets a coat of oil. Because the goal is to try to keep this thing in as good a shape as it was when I got it. Because eventually, when this isn't a main part of the operation anymore, I would really like to repaint this thing, because these planters look really sharp all done up. But anyway, that's the gist of it. So I'm going to get the boxes prepped, and then we'll get the augers in. Once the boxes are all oiled, the augers get the same treatment. And I don't care if there's oil running off of them, dripping all over everything, making a mess on the frame, any of that, because you know what? If it's covered in oil, it's not rusting. So you don't gotta be shy with this by any means. This is one of the few times where the more you use, the better protected you're gonna be. Especially on something like this where they ain't making them anymore. But it makes a little less of a mess on your hands if you stuff the auger halfway in and use the box to hold it, so that you don't got to get oil all over yourself. To an extent, you're still going to get oil on yourself, but this makes life a little easier. Then, once you get the augers oiled and in, at least on the Fowler 540, somebody had the really smart idea to put a grease zerk on the auger, or the fertilizer augers, and when you're done, you pump the auger full of grease, and any fertilizer that would have worked its way in between the auger casting and the axle shaft, you can push that out so that the auger doesn't rust from the inside out and the shaft doesn't rust. So basically you just start pumping until you start getting grease and quit, because it's not like it's a rotating part that's strictly there to help save the auger and make it where if you ever decide to adjust your fertilizer rate, you can still move the augers and not have them froze up or fall apart. And then just I go over and grease the whole planter, and that pushes any water out of the bushings that might have got worked into them while I was power washing it. And when all that's done, throw a coat of oil on the chains, put the boxes back on, and you're pretty much good to go. Oh, and I spray some WD on the coulters just so they won't rust up. If it's sitting outside, obviously you want to use something a little heavier than WD, but it sits in a barn, so you just need something to keep it from getting the fuzzy shit on it. And when you're doing this, it's also a good time to check the planter over and see what you need to do next year. Like, I found I got a bearing going out in that car. Well, it's not going out, it is out in that coulter. So probably gonna go through, if I don't have a new planter bought by next spring, which the way things are looking, probably not going to be able to afford one, because, you know, markets are being stupid. But probably going to go through and put all 8 bearings in those things, and then every coulter on this thing will have a new bearing. Well, the coulters and everything are new on the row units, but that's the last set of coulter bearings I need to change. Well, I need to do the ones in the marker arms too, so probably 10 new bearings on this thing next fall, or next spring. But anyhow, that is the planter washed up and oiled up and ready to go to the barn. So now time to do the drill. Well, drill's all cleaned up. This is really easy. All I do is just like the planter, the coulters, get a shot of WD-40, and then the inside of the box is at least the unpainted parts.
Tell you what, here lately, the WD-40 cans we've been ending up with don't spray for shit. Is it gonna? Not for shit. Well, there we go. Obviously the fertilizer box on this doesn't really do anything, but the castings in here are bare metal, so after I wash the dust out of it, it's just cover all that stuff up. After you wash the dust out, it's just best to shoot it with something to keep it protected. And then the feed wheels, try to shoot down in there as best I can. God, that can just sucks. Wonder if we got another one. And once the boxes are rolled down, just like the planter, go through and give the chains a shot of oil and grease it to push all the water out of the bushings, and that's pretty much it for the drill. The one thing you always got to check on these, because the gearboxes don't actually have seals in them. They just, you keep the oil level below the shaft, and it leaks a little bit when you're using it, but it's just, that's, I'm sure when they were new they didn't really leak because the tolerance or the shaft was tighter in the housing, but not when they get this old. The shafts just weep a little bit while you're using it, and which isn't really that big of a deal because it helps keep the clutch mechanism oiled up. But that's something about once, or usually in the spring when I'm getting ready, you pop that cover off and just make sure there's no water in that gearbox. Normally, I mean, there never has been. You just got to be careful when you're power washing around it, and you never have an issue, but just something to keep in mind when you're cleaning them up. So anyhow, that's basically what I do to prep these things for storage. So anyhow, run these things over to the barn and put them away for the season, finally, after all that. So I guess that's it for this one. We'll catch you all on the next one.